You're listening to Lasting Recovery on AM 1000 KCEO. Once again, here's your host, Dr. Judy Saalinger.
Welcome back to Lasting Recovery. I'm Dr. Judy Saalinger, licensed marriage, family therapist, and certified addiction specialist with Lasting Recovery, San Diego's premier holistic and strengths-based outpatient alcohol and drug treatment program. We focus on strengthening your courage, your commitment to the quality of your life, your compassion, the love of your family and friends. And we recognize that substance dependence can make us feel guilty and ashamed. And at Lasting Recovery, we help you increase your self-esteem and your worth by focusing on your important values and gifts and strengths that you have that have gotten you through life so far. And we want to talk today about some of the problems that people have, and we're going to be asking you a couple of questions. And as we just finished up here in our last segment, we were talking about the dosage, the quantity, the strength of the medications over the last couple of years. Has it increased? Are you really taking the medications for what's needed? One of the things that I find is that a person will be given pain medication, and where pain medication actually only is valuable for less than 30 days, and you know that it really does quiet the pain, and after that it's just becomes some substance that works towards an addiction. And I was really surprised about that when I read the research on it. However, I do know, Ed, and I'll share this. I have Ed Lacey with me, who's an international addiction consultant. And one of the things that I want to say is that, you know, during those 33 years where, this last 33 years that I've been clean from prescription drugs, I had to have major surgery. Actually, I had a rod put in my spine. And I was put on Vicodin for only 3 days. And 3 days. And then I had developed, at that point, some of the internal skills that I knew how to manage pain, and I didn't need any more pain medication.
That's amazing.
And this is what we really need to know, is that it's for acute pain. It's not really for chronic pain. And so people then get the symptom of pain because it's related to suffering, it's related to emotional suffering. And the other thing is that we get a twinge of pain and we get frightened that the pain is going to be so bad that we're not...
Or like it was before.
Like it was before. At one point, it was probably only for about an hour or two, maybe even a day. However, the mind goes back to the worst possible scenario rather than actually the one that's most emotionally intense. And then we think that that's the way it's going to be. So we develop these addictions to pain medications. They're really quite powerful in the addictive process of how you get addicted. And so, you know, we have some questions here. First of all, is your medication quite important to you, and do you worry about refills long before running out? And I know with myself, it's part of preoccupation that I wanted to make sure that I had enough, and I always had, you know, a couple of hundred.
That's called stash.
That's called stash, exactly. Yeah. Yes. And then you know what happens is that you don't want to share them with anybody, but you know a lot of times when someone knows that you're taking substances, they'll come to you and say, well, gee, you know, can I have a Valium? Could I have some Percocet, or can I have a Vicodin? Because I'm about to run out. And so you find that people will share drugs, which is really illegal to do.
Sure.
So then we become very annoyed or uncomfortable when other people talk about our use of medications.
Exactly. You know, because what we're doing is we're hiding that addiction that we know inside that we shouldn't be doing what we're doing, and we're hiding it. And so when people bring it to the surface, there's that fear of confrontation, or that they might do something, and I'll lose that one thing that I can hold on to. The only thing I think I know that will keep me relatively secure throughout the day.
Yes. And you know, you talk about that word secure. We talk about, you know, if I don't have it, I become fearful. And that's one of the things that I realized when I was making that decision to go off of the prescription drugs, was that I realized that my life was run by fear.
Sure.
And I was afraid of everything. And what I know now is that's because the fear part of my brain had really been usurped by the substances themselves, that it gets right into that amygdala, the lower brain, that where fear and stress is part of our natural, sort of a natural response to those particular situations, but that becomes the dominant muscle, so to speak.
Exactly. You know, I was raised in an environment where cowboys don't cry and Marines don't surrender. And that fear was in there since I can remember as a kid, had been in there. And then I went off and joined the Marine Corps and spent 20 years in the Marines. And those first 10 years were absolutely horrible. And the fact that I had never, ever learned about touching those feelings and going in and working with them. And in the Marines, no one ever asked you, excuse me, how do you feel? I mean,
Yes.
and that's not their role either. But to talk about exactly what you're saying, so you use a substance that sort of gives you, it gives you a temporary relief
Yes.
to what's going on, and before you know it, you're on a road and you can't get off.
Yes, and to move off of fear onto trust becomes the whole task of recovery. And one has to learn that you can do it, that there is hope, that you can experience life without the sense of fear.
Isn't that what lasting recovery really, the primary, what would you say would be the primary goal in lasting recovery for that young adult, for that woman, for that man walking in the front door of lasting recovery? What's your primary goal when they're walking in?
Our primary goal is to be able to help them to develop trust. I wrote a book called Fearless Change, Embrace the Choice to Reinvent Your Life. And based on the experiences that I'd had personally and with many years of working with clients, 40 hours a week, with all the struggles that they had, what I realized is that whether somebody came in for therapy because they were depressed or angry or hurt, or they had poor relationships, or they were in the wrong job, whatever it was, they were primarily coming from an emotional base of fear. And so there were many different ways that they could then reframe it to be able to trust. And the first thing that people have to do is to accept the reality of where they are. And this is the one thing that we really work with in addiction treatment, is to be able to give people the experience of knowing that there's another way, and to be able to help them to accept that there's a good way and a positive way to live their life that is going to be free from the devastating, paralyzing effects of fear.
Yeah. I was just saying, when you're mentioning that, there's this wonderful lady in La Jolla, and about 30 years ago I heard her use a non-clinical way to describe the disease, and she talked about you have a hole in the gut and the wind's blowing through and you're alone and afraid.
Yes.
And I thought, she just took 40 years of medicine and put it into a sentence to really describe what the addict, the alcoholic, the person using the pills, the cross-addicted one feels when they walk into lasting recovery.
Yes, that is so true, because they're trapped in fear, they're depressed, they feel suicidal. That's their life is falling apart, and they're spiritually bankrupt.
Right. And they don't know there's a way out. The addict alcoholic doesn't know there's a way out.
Yes.
And although it's on every billboard and it's in many magazines, we hear it on the radio just as we're doing here today. As part of the goal even today is to break through that denial and give people the hope, the installation of hope that there is a way out of this. You don't have to live with those pills on a daily basis. And there's hope at Lasting Recovery and professionals to help them get off the medication, and then to give them new tools to use to get that spirit back. I heard Mrs. Ford once talk about the alcoholic woman who walks with dignity.
Yes,
and I went, wow.
That's what she was addicted to alcohol and prescription drugs, and she gave me courage. She gave me so much courage to do this, and I consider myself one of Betty's babes. And that woman has made such a wonderful contribution to the women throughout the world. To realize that it is nothing to be ashamed of.
I told her in front of a group one time, and some gave me the face. I shouldn't have said this, but what I said was that, really, I really see your value to society, not so much in the Betty Ford Center, but the day you stood at the White House with your husband and your family with you, and you said, my name is Betty, and I'm an alcoholic. And that opened the door for many women to get recovery, and it changed society, and it changed addiction recovery. And,
yes. You're so right. It brought it out into the open. It said it's okay. There's nothing to be ashamed of.
Right.
What we feel guilty about is that we think we should be able to control everything in our lives. And that's the illusion that gets created with substances.
And it's getting worse and worse.
It certainly is, because the drugs are getting more prevalent with younger kids. They're starting to use them at such earlier ages. And again, the amount of drugs that people are taking it's incredible. a question or want to give us a call, you can reach us at our offices at 858-453-4315 or visit our website at lastingrecovery.com. We wanted to just ask you another question. Do you feel, or has anyone else told you that you have a change of personality when you take your medication or when you stop using it? You know, Ed, I think that one of the things that we talked about, that, you know, someone feels better, they feel happier, that may only last so for a very short period of time, and then people become more depressed and despondent. When I hear parents come in and talk about their child who they think is on substance abusing medications, they can't tell whether the kid is depressed because they're isolating, their grades drop, they're not reaching out to the same friends, they're hanging out with other kids that parents know that they're using marijuana, that they're drinking. The kids aren't keeping their commitments to themselves. And this is how addiction just really erodes away at the sense of self, because people cannot keep their commitments. And that's one of the things that we do with lasting recovery, and why we think that treatment is really helpful, because when someone signs up for, you know, an 8 or 10 week program, 3, 4 times, 5 times a week, they have to keep that commitment.
Correct.
And in doing that, what happens is that their self-esteem starts growing, and they start feeling better about themselves, and they begin opening up to a sense of love and connection with themselves and their families that they never felt before.
And I think what you said was just so correct. It's that it's an internal commitment. It's
Yes.
that just for once being able to say, okay, this is it. And in reaching your hand out and saying, you know, my kids know this. I always ask my kids the same question. What, if they're getting in a jam, I say, what's the first step? And they say, ask for help, Dad. And I say, you got it.
That's
so
right.
it's that internal commitment that this is it. I can't do this. Reaching out, you know, and asking for help, and that's where Lasting Recovery. And you know, and I've been fortunate enough to visit, you know, Lasting Recovery and know your staff there, and just seeing the excellent work that's being done there with just a wide variety of people who work with you. And that gives you that sense that you've built a team. You know,
Yes.
I talk to a lot of young adults, and I think, you know, and I tell them, if Kobe Bryant were playing alone on that court without the rest of the Lakers, they would never win. He would never have the fame that he has today. But he only has that fame, because of the skills, but because also the skills in his association with the other 4 members of his team. And so it's important that those listeners who may have that pill addiction, or alcohol addiction, or drug addiction, know that when they come to Lasting Recovery, that they're going to join a team, and they're not
Yes.
alone.
And thank you. And we have with us today Ed Lacey, who is an international addiction consultant, and he's just referring to the fact that we have a hand-selected group of professionals. We've got addiction counselors, psychologists, supportive, caring, and knowledgeable staff. We've got a wellness team of certified experts, award-winning psychiatrists, and an addiction medicine specialist who has 40 years of experience. And if you have a concern about detoxing from prescription drugs, know that our doctor has detoxed over 25,000 people off of substances. He knows what he's doing. Also, our programs are nationally accredited by CARF, a Commission on Accreditation of Rehabilitation Facilities. So addictions chain you to fear where there's no hope. We'll help you, but you have to call and ask for help. We can give you hope when you thought there was none, and the first thing it takes is a phone call. We have somebody on the line who can be able to answer your questions and talk to you about whatever it is you're struggling with. So again, this is Judy Saalinger on Lasting Recovery, and we have been talking about prescription drugs, the problems and the solutions, and we really encourage you to recognize that you're not alone.